Not much more than 1 week to go now until the biggest show of the year, and the picture is becoming much clearer with regard to Built to Destroy, the ReLoaded podcast on the air. Dave Bradshaw here with James R. Kennedy. And James, the reason principally I say that the picture is becoming clearer is because we have had 3 more matches signed for Built to Destroy this week. Perhaps the biggest of all being Martin Kirby going to defend the internet title against his old foe, Joe Hendry. How are you feeling about that?
Well, I'm excited to see it because anytime you put 2 athletes like Martin Kirby and Joe Hendry inside a Defiant ring, special things happen. I mean, you and I have called some classics. You more so than I, it has to be said, have called some classics between these 2 guys. Let's have another chapter, please. I can't wait to see it.
So Kirby and Hendry, as we know, have had a pretty storied history with each other. Martin Kirby, of course, earned the right to defend the internet title on June 29th by virtue of the fact that he won the main event this week on Loaded against Simon Miller. We're going to talk about that match in a bit more detail in just a moment or so here. But for those who are maybe new to Defiant Wrestling, let's talk a bit more about Kirby and Hendry. So Kirby and Hendry have sort of been at loggerheads throughout most of this company's history, it seems like, including when we were WCPW, back in the day. When Kirby won his first, or his only world title here in What Culture or Defiant, as it now is, it was through victory in the No Regrets Rumble in 2017, which at the time was a Rumble for the world title. But then less than a week later, he lost that championship to Joe Hendry via stoppage when Hendry concussed Kirby so badly that the referee had to bring it to a close. The 2 of them, as I said, have been at each other's throats on and off throughout the rest of their time here. Both of them been with the company since its very inception. Their most recent battle was at Refuse to Lose last October, an I Quit match where Kirby finally got the win he craved against Joe Hendry. And since then, I guess it's been on pause because both of those men have had other business to attend to here in Defiant. But it's one of those rivalries that you just get the sense some rivalries never die. And this one, I think, these 2 will be wanting to knock lumps out of each other until they die. Until one of them is no longer around, they will choose to hate each other. And I think that's just a fact. So what do you expect this time that we haven't seen before from Kirby and Hendry? Actually, particularly from Hendry, given that he's entering this match having gone through that humiliation of saying I quit last time they met. What's different for Joe Hendry now versus last autumn when they last met?
Well, Joe Hendry to me is in the physical shape of his life. Anyone who follows Mr. Hendry on Twitter, Instagram, any other social media platform, they will see these progress pictures of his body. He's working hard in the gym. He's got so much going on. Joe Hendry is dedicated to the cause. He truly believes that 2019 and 2020 will be the years that Joe Hendry shows the wrestling world what he's capable of. Maybe phase 1 of that is taking that internet championship away from Martin Kirby at Built to Destroy. In terms of something different, well, different is a key word when it comes to Hendry, because in that Iron Man match against Gabriel Kidd, God rest his soul, okay, he's not dead, but his career in Defiant Wrestling is, and Hendry killed it. Joe Hendry showed us some new offense that we've never seen from him before. So Martin Kirby would do well to scout that Iron Man match, because this is a very, very different, prestigious one, a very, very different Joe Hendry to the one Martin Kirby defeated back at Refuse to Lose.
Yeah, I think that's right, actually, because I think that Hendry has changed a lot in those months since he last competed against Kirby, in particular because of that feud he had with Gabriel Kidd, where it took him a long time to finally get that decisive victory. Remember that, that 20-minute time limit draw in the first match that those 2 had, and then followed that up with a disqualification on Loaded, and then finally gets that win. So Hendry has learned, I think, that persistence pays off for him now. And he does seem to have this new determination, this new kind of fire in his eyes. As you say, he's been talking about how He actually says, I've heard him say a couple of times, that 2019 won't be his year, 2020 will, because 2019 is all about building himself up to be, one of the best, if not the best in the world, is what he wants to be next year. So he's definitely got a goal in sight. He's got a very clear vision of who he wants to be, and a lot of that I think has come out of that defeat to Kirby last autumn. And so I think he promised himself. You get the impression with Hendry after that defeat, he just sort of said, never again. I will never allow myself to go through that kind of humiliation on pay-per-view again. And now he gets the chance to avenge that. And it may be a chance that's come a little bit sooner than he ever realised it would, because this announcement by General Amin of this match has kind of come out of the blue a little bit. I don't think anyone was particularly expecting that he was going to sign a Kirby-Hendry match for Built to Destroy. But here we are, and Hendry has a chance to do what he's done before, which is to take a championship away from Martin Kirby. It happened in 2017, and you do wonder now whether history might repeat itself.
It could repeat itself. Joe Hendry certainly will be hoping that he's going to be the winner on this occasion. We talk about refuse to lose, the bitter disappointment of that I Quit match, and I think you might be onto something when you suggest that Joe Hendry looked himself in the mirror and said, this can never happen again. But there are two sides to this match. We also have that internet champ Martin Kirby, and this is massive for Kirby because he is going from one extreme to the other. Because on Loaded this past week, I know you're trying to put this off, Dave Bradshaw. I know that, speaking of disappointment, you are disappointed that your good friend Simon Miller didn't get the job done. And what I'm trying to get at here is Martin Kirby is going from facing a very inexperienced professional wrestler to a red-hot pro who is ready to go, and that is Joe Hendry. But let's not move on from the fact that you might just be crying your eyes out at Miller's disappointment.
Well, it doesn't matter what I think about Simon Miller. What matters is that Simon Miller obviously is incredibly disappointed. It was the biggest chance of his career. He felt like he had a big opportunity. He felt like he was on a roll after that victory over John Klinger recently, and yet on the night he just couldn't quite get it done against Kirby, who somehow found a way to just about claw his way to a victory on Loaded once again.
Call it how it is. Martin Kirby with that small package, it was superb ring awareness, poise and savvy from the internet champ. You have to give him credit.
I will say it was inexperience on the part of Miller, probably, that allowed him to get drawn into that situation and taken by surprise in that way. What I don't think was warranted whatsoever was what happened afterwards. So Nathan Cruz came out after the end of the match. Kirby had thankfully disappeared, and Cruz had plenty to say, didn't he, about Simon Miller and Miller's lack of qualification in Cruz's view for being part of the Defiant roster. You must have felt a little bit sorry for Simon Miller when you heard some of the bile that was coming out of Nathan Cruz's mouth.
I can understand where Nathan Cruz is coming from, however, because for the best part of 15 long, arduous, tough years, Nathan Cruz has travelled the world, and he has furthered the good name of British professional wrestling. And now, from his perspective, he must look at someone like Simon Miller who has the body, who has the charisma. Simon Miller has all the tools, but he's going to have to learn, and quickly, that he has a long way to go before he'll ever deserve to be in the ring with men like Martin Kirby or Nathan Cruz. And that is just a fact no one can deny. I actually think that Cruz is shining the spotlight onto the fans of Defiant Wrestling as well, because they are the people, the men, women and children who are enabling this fantasy that Simon Miller is living in. He is trying to run before he can even walk.
Now, we've had this argument before on this very program where someone asked us a question about whether Simon Miller could be a future world champion, and you thought you were insulted by even the premise of the question. Right, so let me ask you then. Let me ask you outright, rather than you be allowed to dodge the issue. That's what you've accused me of already today. Well, is Nathan Cruz right then? Let me again go through what some of Nathan Cruz said in those words at the end. He called Simon Miller Bill Goldberg without the talent. He said that Simon Miller, if he wants some advice from, as Cruz is a 13-year pro, who's had over 2,000 matches, then Cruz's advice to Miller is to burn his boots and go home. Yeah, I'm sure you're laughing because in Cruz's words, Miller is effing useless.
Oh,
Now, go on. I mean, if that's what you think as well, then at least have the conviction to say it.
well, listen, you might not believe this, but I don't think that Simon Miller is useless. And I'll tell you for why, because I am a pro wrestling commentator. I used to be a manager. I do have an eye for talent. I can spot a good skill set when I see one. Simon Miller, as I've already has a lot going for him. But Nathan Cruz is a different kettle of fish than I. Nathan Cruz, as I said again, has travelled the world for 15 years, approximately 15 years. He knows what he's talking about. He is an authority beyond you or I, and certainly an authority beyond Simon Miller. Maybe, just maybe, Nathan Cruz is trying to save Miller from himself, because perhaps it's only a matter of time before Simon Miller gets seriously hurt, and no one wants to see that.
So you're saying it's an act of selflessness on the part of Nathan Cruz. It's an act of charity, doing the right thing, telling someone that doesn't have potential that they should go home. Is that what you're saying?
Well, there are many different ways to go about this for Nathan Cruz. An arm round the shoulder, perhaps. But this is tough love. And it goes beyond that as well, because Nathan Cruz is disgusted at the mere notion of Simon Miller even being involved. This wrestling rookie, this YouTuber who has come out of completely nowhere, come out of left field, and suddenly all these Defiant wrestling marks, all these people believe that he is the future of the industry. I'm sorry, men like Nathan Cruz are the past, present, and future of Defiant wrestling.
Let me suggest a possible other scenario that might explain what Nathan Cruz has been saying. Is it possible, just remotely possible, that Nathan Cruz is a cynical veteran who's worried that people like Simon Miller, people like A-Kid, who took Cruz to the limit on Loaded this week, that these up-and-comers, these newcomers, might possibly take away his spot, that they might somehow usurp him and get his bookings, get his championships that he believes are rightfully his. Maybe beyond all this bravado and all this talk about you can't cut it, kid, you should burn your boots and all this sort of thing, that Nathan Cruz is actually quite insecure.
Well, there was nothing insecure about the professional's performance against A-Kid. It was phenomenal to watch. Just absolute poetry in motion from starting bell to last. And something else that didn't fail to catch my attention was the match-winning submission that Nathan Cruz used as well. So it doesn't only look like the professional is targeting Simon Miller, because, you called it on commentary, Dave. That was definitely David Starr's go-to submission, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what kind of message Nathan Cruz is trying to send to David Starr, and I would certainly hope that Cruz isn't going to claim that Starr doesn't deserve to be in the same ring as him. I think that would be a stretch even for Nathan Cruz. But this is the thing, even with someone like A-Kid, and granted, I'm saying, I'll concede that Cruz won the match ultimately, but he's been saying about A-Kid, this is a guy who's just the internet flavour of the month because he's had, a match against Zack Sabre Jr. that went viral, one against Will Ospreay that went viral, and so suddenly everyone thinks that this 22-year-old is a big deal and I'm going to beat him easily and then he'll never be seen again. Well, actually, yes, Cruz won, but it's not like it was easy. A-Kid gave him a great match, and I think Simon Miller gave Martin Kirby a great match. So it's not like these guys are a million miles away from the talent level of a Nathan Cruz or a Martin Kirby. That's why I think when he's saying, "Oh, you should burn your boots. You've got no potential. You shouldn't be here. You should be on the other side of the guardrail." I don't think even Cruz believes that. I think Cruz is saying that because he's trying to convince them of that so that they will go away and stop being a threat to him.
Can I ask you a question?
I'm sure you will anyway.
Have you been drinking?
No.
And my reason for asking is because I'll give you the A-Kid one. You know, A-Kid is a star on the rise. He's had interest from some of the biggest promotions in the land. He's starting to make a mark for himself as a singles star, as well as with Team White Wolf in Defiant Wrestling. He's one, entity altogether. You cannot put Simon Miller in the same breath as anyone else on the Defiant roster, because Simon is a rookie. Simon is a YouTube personality who has decided to play wrestler. And that
He just beat John Klinger. He just beat John Bad Bones Klinger, and he nearly became the internet champion on Sunday.
Everyone has a good day, and that was a fluke. You know, that definitely was a fluke. Look what happened when fluke and luck wasn't on Miller's side. He was crushed, ultimately, by Martin Kirby. And if Simon Miller knows what is good for him, he will heed Nathan Cruz's advice, burn those boots, and he will get the hell out the wrestling industry. Go back to presenting on YouTube. Hell, become a professional wrestling manager or a commentator or something like that. That's what I did. I had the courage to look myself in the mirror and say, I could not be a professional wrestler because it is tough. Simon Miller needs to realise that he has a long way to go. He cannot run before he walks.
Wait, okay. There is an no offence to, well, maybe some offence to you, but there is an enormous difference in the athletic acumen of a Simon Miller versus a James R. Kennedy. Simon Miller is a great athlete. Simon Miller has clearly got potential. Even what you're saying has contradicted itself in the past 5 minutes, because you said a minute ago that Simon Miller has potential. He has this, he has that, and now you're saying now you're agreeing with Cruz and saying he should burn his boots. So which is it? He's either got potential and should stick at it, or Cruz is right and he should give up.
I'll have you know that I once managed 25 press-ups without being sick. That's the kind of athlete I am, but I'm not going to put myself in the same category as Simon Miller physically. No doubt. Look at the guy.
You kind of just did. You just sort of described yourself as courageous for realizing in a way that Simon Miller hasn't but should have, in your view, that, me and him don't deserve to be in a wrestling ring. That's essentially what you're saying.
Well, listen. Simon Miller is very dedicated to, improving his physique. And he has one hell of a physique. It's incredible to watch. This man has so many muscles in places I didn't even know places existed. He has charisma by the bucket load. Many people across the world could listen to Simon Miller speak about professional wrestling, video games, anything to do with pop culture for hours. He has an audience. I am not denying that. But when that bell rings, there is a difference between looking and sounding the part and being able to hack it against some of the finest professional wrestlers on the globe today. That's what Nathan Cruz is trying to say. Simon Miller could end up getting hurt here. This isn't a joke. When that bell rings, it is serious competition. You have to fight or flight.
It takes a special kind of delusion to think that Nathan Cruz is saying what he said to Simon Miller because he's looking after Simon Miller's health. I've got to say, I mean, that is, even for you, that's a stretch. We've had a couple of questions, by the way, on these subjects, the subject of Kirby and Hendry, and on Miller as well. Kimmy, who regularly writes in, thank you again for writing in this week with a question, wants to know, if Kirby defeats Hendry at Built to Destroy, would Kirby have to be considered as the best internet champion in Defiant history?
What a question that is, but I would have to say that Martin Kirby is already not only the finest Defiant internet champion of all time, but he has been one of the most consistent champions we have ever had here in Defiant Wrestling. When he was world champ, wow, those 7 days were special. And this reign as internet champ, he has beaten some of the best. So yes, I would say that Martin Kirby is already one of the finest.
Well, in terms of the specifics of the question, is he one of the best internet champions? I agree with you. He's had an incredible career in Defiant, as much as I might find him exceptionally irritating. But in terms of his internet title reign, well, you already know what I think about that. We discussed this last week. The answer is no, because he hasn't defended it on Loaded until this week. And the whole idea of the internet title was that it gets defended on YouTube, on Loaded every week, or not every week, but at least regularly. and that hasn't happened, and it's because Martin Kirby is too arrogant to do it. So no. I think he's an incredible talent. I think he'll take Joe Hendry to the limit. I can't pick a winner at Built to Destroy, but you can't be the best internet champion in history when you've got the arrogance of a Martin Kirby. It's simple as that. I had another question about this. It's a simple question. This is Lee Chivington says, who's going to win, Hendry or Kirby? And I've just said I don't think I can pick. So I'm doing a James R. Kennedy and sitting on the fence. Are you going to join me on the fence?
Well, it's pretty comfy on this fence, and as I always say when it comes to these kinds of matchups, how could you pick? Martin Kirby versus Joe Hendry is one of those marquee matches that just, sells the flavour of what Defiant Wrestling is all about. Martin Kirby is on a roll. Joe Hendry is damn sure on a roll coming out of that Iron Man match. How could you, I wouldn't bet money on any of these guys. I wouldn't bet against either of them either, but I'm certainly not putting my money where my mouth is until this situation develops a little bit further.
Well, that was predictable. I mean, I don't know if we've ever had a question about who will win a match where you've actually answered it, but there we are. I suppose I can't criticise. On this occasion, I joined you in doing that. Anyway, Martin Kirby and Joe Hendry internet title will be on the line at Built to Destroy, along with many other matches, including the world title match between Rampage and David Starr. If you want to join us in Newcastle, Saturday week, June 29th, you can join us. There are tickets still available at wearedefiant.com/tickets. If you're going to watch on demand, we'll be streaming live all around the world on that Saturday night. You can get us on Access Defiant at access.wearedefiant.com. Right, let's talk about another match that's been signed for Built to Destroy, and that is the tag team titles are going to be on the line. We'll talk about what the match actually ended up being in just a minute, but it was a pretty dramatic turn of events, because going into Loaded on Sunday, Renben, this team of Benji and Connor Renshaw, had a non-title match against the South Coast Connection, the SCC. The idea was that if Renben could pick up the win in this non-title match, they would get a rematch at Built to Destroy with the titles on the line. Of course, that's not exactly what happened, is it?
Well, no, because all along Benji has been preaching that, see the light, Connor Renshaw, do the right thing, win the correct way, and then what happens? Benji uses that Magnificent 7 briefcase, he hits Ashley Dunn with it, and then he tries to pretend to poor Connor Renshaw that he didn't do it. What's all that about?
Well, he didn't. I mean, he didn't hit anyone, did he? I mean, you saw it as plain as day as I did. Ashley Dunn fooled the referee. He tricked the referee into thinking that Benji, of all people, of the 4 people in that match, the one least likely to have used the briefcase to take a shortcut was Benji. And unfortunately, Ashley Dunn and Kelly Six, they sold the referee a bill of goods and the referee bought it.
Well, I beg to differ. I really do, because I have watched this match, and specifically that incident, from multiple camera angles, and in every single one, that little mutt Benji has this devious, twisted look in his face. He couldn't wait to inflict pain on the SCC. Poor Ashley Dunn didn't know what hit him. He had to go to hospital after the match and get some stitches, because, wow, what a shot that was. It certainly is. You don't know how hard someone like Benji can hit until you get hit by them. I didn't know he had that kind of power.
Utter fantasist is what you are. And an utter unquestioning cheerleader for SCC. I'll never understand it. I'll never understand why you think that a team who literally, as far as I'm aware, have never won a tag team title defense without cheating, are somehow worthy of you coming onto this program every week and lying for them, lying to defend them. Why do that?
I'll tell you what isn't a lie. The SCC are still the tag team champions, and if Benji thinks he can hitch his wagon to the rising success of Visage and ditch Connor Renshaw after all Connor Renshaw has done for Benji, he's got another thing coming. Benji, there's something about this guy Bradshaw. He just deflects good people. Maybe Visage is going to be no different. Maybe at Built to Destroy, Benji is going to blindside Visage with that Magnificent 7 briefcase as well. This man is a danger, a threat. He must be stopped.
All right, well, let's rewind through your little rewriting of history there, because it wasn't Benji who ditched Renshaw whatsoever. In fact, Benji has been working very hard to try and reform the character of Conor Renshaw. Unfortunately, Renshaw, like our referee on Sunday night, fell for that decision and believed, I think, that Benji had indeed used the briefcase to hit Ashley Dunn and to cost Renben the match. Renshaw then totally snapped on Benji and proved everyone's point, by the way. You've been ridiculing this and saying it's a conspiracy theory for weeks and months now. Whenever I've said, or anyone else has said, that, you know what, Conor Renshaw is using Benji because Benji has that Magnificent Seven briefcase and Renshaw rather wants championship gold. So he wants to form a tag team and get a tag title shot. As soon as that went out the window with Benji, when they didn't get the title shot that Renshaw wanted, he pulled the plug on the whole thing and attacked Benji. So, you know, this idea that Renshaw was ever a real friend, a real partner to Benji was always nonsense.
Well, Conor Renshaw was frustrated, disappointed, and I think he had a right to be angry, because all along Benji has been preaching this innocence and, oh, you know, see the light at the end of the tunnel, Conor. You can do it if you just believe in your God-given physical abilities. You don't need to cheat to win. And then Benji tries to cheat to win. So
he did it how many times? He didn't try and cheat. It did not happen.
He's an animal, Dave Bradshaw. Benji is an absolute wanton criminal as far as I'm concerned. And I think it's a disgrace that suddenly he can ditch Conor Renshaw and butter up Visage and cash in that Magnificent Seven briefcase and challenge the SCC, one of the finest tag teams of their generation, for the Defiant tag team titles at Built to Destroy. He should be in jail.
In jail, you're an embarrassment. But I mean, I will say this: I think Benji has maybe spent a little bit too much time listening to people he shouldn't have listened to. Hopefully he doesn't listen to you, but he has been listening to Conor Renshaw, when really the one person who I can think of throughout this whole saga with Renshaw who's been telling Benji the truth is Visage. And Visage, by the way, was telling Benji this when there was nothing in it for Visage. Visage was in a team with Sexsmith, Jack Sexsmith, who's currently on the injured list. And yet Visage was always saying, don't trust Conor Renshaw, don't trust Conor Renshaw. And then, like a true friend, when Benji was being attacked by Renshaw, Visage was the one this Sunday who came to the rescue. And so I think Benji has done absolutely the right thing by saying, you know what, we didn't get a tag title shot at me and Conor by winning this match tonight, but I'm going to cash in my briefcase at Built to Destroy with you, Visage, and get this shot against SCC. And not only that, but it's going to be a ladder match. Oof. A ladder match so that SCC cannot steal a pinfall like they have in every other tag team title defense. Those championship belts are going to be hanging high above the ring. The only way you can win is to climb the ladder and seize the belts. There's no disqualification, so nothing is against the rules. There's no rules to break, so that Benji and Visage can do as they please, essentially, to SCC, whose advantage, because they have that advantage in all the other matches they've had of taking every shortcut, every corner that they want to, that advantage is eliminated because the odds are evened under the rules of a ladder match. It's smart.
Well, it might be smart, but, you know, I harp on a lot on this programme, or not harp on, I tell people the truth, that the SCC...
No, harp on is right.
Okay. Just you get back to your drinking, that's a good boy. But anyway, good boy. It's like I'm talking to Benji. But anyway, the SCC, one of the most resourceful teams that we have, and you can call it cheating, I call it resourcefulness. One other attribute that they have is high flying, and crucially, teamwork, chemistry. The SCC, Dunn and Six, have been together since day one when they walked through a professional wrestling training school doors. They know one another inside out. The same can't be said for Benji and Visage. They're a new team. And by the way, how many different partners do these guys want? It's getting ridiculous now.
Well, Visage has only had to shift partners because Jack Sexsmith is injured, so it's not exactly like it was a cynical move on the part of Visage. And Benji has been lumbered with a partner who never had his best interests at heart in Conor Renshaw. So I don't think you can fault either of them for changing tag partners. I'm not really sure what your point is.
Well, Visage tried to start a little tag team with Lana Austin as well, if you recall. It's getting ridiculous now. They're going round the houses. But I will grant you this. There is something, as much as I detest everything he stands for, there is something you just can't put your finger on when it comes to Benji. He finds a way, somehow, some way, to win every now and then. He did it to get that Magnificent Seven briefcase. Maybe with the help of Visage, he can become tag team champions. And I cannot believe that those words just left my mouth.
So are you nervous? Is that what you're saying? Are you nervous for SCC, given that Benji's been smart, taken that champion's advantage away, taken that advantage that SCC have had in cheating away? So it sounds to me like you've realised that Benji has played a blinder here and that SCC are in serious trouble.
I don't want to say anything negative about the SCC, and again, I do think in a ladder match some of their shining skills will come to the fore, but I do worry that they won't be able to be as resourceful in this kind of match as they would be under different circumstances. But I do think Benji has also railroaded the SCC into this match. Who gave him the authority to make this a ladder match in the first place?
Well, he did, by having the briefcase.
It's disgusting. Shouldn't be happening. The SCC should have the night off so they can go and visit their good pal Will Ospreay over in Japan.
Well, I think we've already established that Will Ospreay barely even knows who they are. But anyway, SCC going to take on Benji and Visage in a ladder match on June 29th. Built to Destroy. Tag team titles will be on the line. Now, we talked earlier a little bit about the world title match. I mentioned Rampage against David Starr. We know, of course, that it's going to be Rampage defending after Rampage defeated Pac just over a week ago on Loaded. This coming week, though, Rampage's partner in crime, I think crime is the operative word with this guy, Rory Coyle, is going to go one-on-one with David Starr in a match that, disturbingly, is being called a video store massacre. It is essentially a hardcore match, but under Rory Coyle's rules, they are on Rory Coyle's terms, and Coyle has offered that if Starr can beat him in that match on Sunday, then Coyle will be not near the ring. He won't even be in the building at Built to Destroy when Rampage takes on Starr. The first and most obvious question here is, why on earth should David Starr trust Rory Coyle? Now, if Starr could win this video store massacre match on Sunday night, could he then trust that Rory Coyle would be a man of his word and stay away from the ring during that world title match, that big main event?
Well, we've said it before that Rory Coyle has this supernatural presence about him. Even if he wasn't physically in the building, maybe he would have an impact on that Defiant World Heavyweight Championship match, because everything the new Rampage, seemingly, because that's what this is, it's not the old Rampage, this is a new beast entirely. Everything the Defiant Champion does is seemingly orchestrated by Rory Coyle. That sick smile that he has on his face, he just loves causing chaos. And did you hear, Dave, that Coyle wants the old David Starr, the kind of guy who'd willingly go to hell and back, use some weapons, shed blood in CZW. He wants that man. He doesn't want the wrestler David Starr. And what does that sound like? That sounds like exactly the same kind of speech Rory Coyle gave about Rampage several months ago, and look what happened there.
Yeah, well, except I think the objectives are different this time. I think the objective with Rampage, as we now know, and it was a successful objective in the end, was to brainwash Rampage and to get Rampage to join forces with Coyle. And that is exactly what Rampage ended up doing. In Starr's case, I think the objective is purely to lure him into this match on Sunday to soften him up. Coyle wants to demolish David Starr in this video store massacre match on Sunday so that 6 days later at Built to Destroy, that Rampage can just pick the bones, essentially, and will have an easy victory over the number one contender for the Defiant World title. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think David Starr is in any way naive. In fact, David Starr is one of the most intelligent wrestlers I think I've ever met. And so I don't think David Starr is oblivious whatsoever to this question of whether Rory Coyle is being sincere about staying away. at Built to Destroy if he were to lose on Sunday. I think Starr knows that Coyle may well break his word, but as Starr and that Coyle is going into this match because he wants to damage Starr before the match. I'm sure David Starr knows all of that, but Starr has accepted the match anyway, and the reason I think he's accepted it is because he still sees it as an opportunity, because he thinks if he can neutralize the threat of Rory Coyle 6 days ahead of Built to Destroy, if he can damage Coyle so much that Coyle is unable to come to the ring to support Rampage in the main event on pay-per-view, then that will be very much to David Starr's advantage. So he knows it's a trap. He knows exactly what Coyle and Rampage are planning by setting up this match for the main event of Loaded this Sunday. But Starr's going to go in there anyway because he thinks he can make that trap backfire and work to his advantage.
Well, at this stage in proceedings, David Starr, coming off that win in the No Regrets Rumble and all the success and fanfare that has followed him ever since. And he's been making waves for a long, long time in the pro wrestling world. As we've documented, hasn't quite happened for him in Defiant. I think at this stage, the product David Starr will try anything. And I said it a little earlier, maybe he will go to hell and back just to prove a point, just to get rid of Rory Coyle, if that's even possible. The other question I have, Bradshaw, is what in God's name is a video store massacre? Because Rory Coyle kept his cards pretty close to his chest, but he did say he's going to be bringing some new toys to play with against David Starr. Everything about this man just makes me feel physically sick.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that Rory Coyle has already done to people or attempted to do to people in Defiant are inhuman. That's the only word I can think to describe some of what Rory Coyle has thought is appropriate. Some of the things he has used as weapons. There's been fire involved. He's choked people out with jump leads. He's brought a coffin to the ring, if you remember. And that bizarre mock funeral that he staged a few months ago. So there's all these things that have happened with Rory Coyle, and there seems to be no depth of depravity to which he won't stoop. And so that's the problem for Starr going into this match. As I say, I think Starr is going into this with eyes wide open. He knows what he's walking into on Sunday, in a sense, in that he knows that what Coyle's aim is, why this match is happening, and that it's not as it seems to be in terms of Coyle's sincerity about what will happen if Starr wins the match. What Starr doesn't know, and what none of us know, is what Coyle means by new toys. Ooh. And that kind of boggles the mind, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%. Rory Coyle, if there's one thing that's become abundantly clear throughout his run here in Defiant Wrestling, he always has another shock up his sleeve. He always has something new to terrify his opponents with. And I agree with you, by the way, that David Starr knows what he's walking into here for the most part. Because that new toys little speech that Rory Coyle gave just gives me goosebumps. Because maybe he has a plan that Starr couldn't hope to prepare for. This is going to be one to watch. What a main event this is going to be.
Yeah, and actually, though, it's not the only reason that Loaded's going to be huge on Sunday. This is for sometimes people think, I think when you have a weekly television show in a wrestling promotion and you're just a few days away from the pay-per-view, you think it might be a kind of a routine episode of the show, right? Well, that's absolutely not the case with Loaded this week, because we've also got this match that's a long time in the making between Laura Di Matteo and Chris Brooks. It's a match that Di Matteo has wanted for quite a while, ever since Brooks essentially assaulted Di Matteo at ringside, because Di Matteo was just sort of in the wrong place at the wrong time, while Brooks was going on a rant about how no one in Defiant Wrestling appreciates him. But what Brooks did to Di Matteo that day, which is several months ago now, really did affect Di Matteo. She was on a winning streak. She was undefeated at that point in what was still very early on in her Defiant career, and then it all kind of nosedived right after that Chris Brooks incident. Di Matteo has since admitted that kind of threw her off her game. She's been dwelling on that. She's been thinking about it, and she really needs closure on this issue that she has with Chris Brooks. The only way she thinks she's going to get that is by challenging Brooks to a match. Brooks has accepted, but somewhat arrogantly and somewhat characteristically of Chris Brooks. He said, "Oh, I'm not going to do it on pay-per-view. I'm not even going to bother showing up to the pay-per-view. So we'll have to have the match on Loaded." He said he'd forgotten who Di Matteo was. That's how irrelevant she is to him. So the match is going to happen. Brooks' attitude aside, is this a good idea for Laura Di Matteo?
Well, you can look at it two ways. You could look at it and say, if Chris Brooks destroys Laura Di Matteo, that sets her back quite a long way. Or you could look at it the other way and suggest that maybe Di Matteo can't lose. Because win or lose, she's going to have sympathy heaped on her, because I think a lot of people are disgusted with the actions of Chris Brooks. They hate this laid-back arrogance that he is projecting onto people at this stage in his Defiant career. Don't forget that Chris Brooks previously was such a cherished member of the roster in Defiant Wrestling. People bought tickets solely to see him wrestle. They enjoyed him that much. He has spurned those people. He has turned his attentions on Laura Di Matteo, and then after that, when Di Matteo could rightly say, "Hey, wait a minute, why are you picking on me?" Chris Brooks has dismissed Laura Di Matteo as unimportant. So I think if Laura Di Matteo thinks about things, she can't really lose here. She gets an opportunity to slap, punch, kick, and wrestle with Chris Brooks, and Laura Di Matteo is one hell of a wrestler. You're right, Dave, this is another great reason to tune into Loaded. I can't wait to see this one either. There's so many matches I can't wait to see. Can it be Sunday already? I just want to see them.
Do you think that for Brooks, this somehow feeds more fuel to that fire where he's saying that, oh, Defiant aren't giving me opportunities, they're putting me in matches that don't matter? Because from Brooks's perspective, as important as this match is to Di Matteo, for those sort of emotional reasons we've talked about, Brooks sees this, I think, as just an annoyance. And that's the way he's kind of framed it in what he said on Loaded just over a week ago. He seems to be saying, oh, fine, I'll show up to Loaded and have this stupid match. He's sort of dismissing the match, as you say. And that makes me think, well, is he going to use that as another example in his twisted version of reality of how he hasn't been given the respect he deserves in Defiant?
He could, but I'm going to answer your question with one of my own, and I think this is very pertinent, because what happens next? Say Chris Brooks loses to Laura Di Matteo after dismissing her, after pie-facing her and then basically saying, you're not important enough for me to focus on. What if Di Matteo gets the win here? Could we see Chris Brooks actually leave Defiant Wrestling in disgrace? That would be a real shame for someone so talented, but this attitude change, rightly or wrongly, it's changed everything in his career trajectory here in Defiant. So do you think, Dave Bradshaw, and I'm going to put you on the spot here because, I'm a man of conviction, I always pick a winner in a match. Do you think that if... You're laughing at... But do you think that Chris Brooks, if he loses to Laura Di Matteo, could actually leave Defiant?
Well, I'm not sure it's realistic. I'm not sure it's realistic to say that Chris Brooks has much of a chance of losing this. And I mean no disrespect to Laura Di Matteo whatsoever. I think Di Matteo is an incredibly talented wrestler. But just size difference, just reach difference. Chris Brooks is very tall, big guy, right? And he's gonna dwarf Laura Di Matteo physically going into this match. And it does just make me think, as you say, if Di Matteo loses it, then it might set her back. And yet, looking at it objectively, you would have to say there is more of a chance that she loses this than that she wins it. And so, as bold as it is, and I respect the boldness of it from Di Matteo that she's insisting on the match, I don't know if it's smart, because I don't know if she can win. And if she can't win, what does it achieve for her? How does that help her get over this problem with Brooks? If Brooks beats her and may do some damage, Brooks could injure her, like to make a point to Defiant management if that's how he wants to send a message. He might try and do that. So I think I do wonder if it's smart. I think it's probably a mistake, and it could be a dangerous mistake.
Well, from my perspective, I think that Laura Di Matteo has been backed into a corner here. She has no choice but to hit back. Chris Brooks seemingly mentally has already moved on from Di Matteo before this match even happens. that could be a key factor, because if Brooks enters this match believing, hey, it's only going to be 1 minute, 2 minutes, perhaps as long as 3 minutes before I either pin or tap out Laura Di Matteo, he might have another thing coming. Because Di Matteo, when she arrived, as you said, Dave, on the Defiant horizon, she was so impressive. And then it all went wrong around that time where Brooks seemed to knock her confidence a little. But think about what Di Matteo will have been doing since then. She will have been seething, waiting on the chance to put things right. Sunday on Loaded is her opportunity.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes, it is an opportunity. It's also a risk, and I hope I'm wrong. I wish Laura Di Matteo the best. I hope Chris Brooks gets what's coming to him, because it is disgraceful what he did to Laura Di Matteo. I'm just not sure that this is, as I say, I'm not sure it's realistic. But we'll find out. We'll find out. It's Di Matteo against Brooks this Sunday on Loaded. Also, of course, as we just talked about, the Video Store Massacre match, as creepy as that sounds and as unnerving as it sounds, Rory Coyle is luring David Starr into this one-on-one no-holds-barred main event on Loaded this Sunday. We're going to see the Anti-Fun Police in action as well against the dynamic duo. It is a warm-up match of sorts for No Fun Done going into his No Fun title defense against HT Drake at Built to Destroy. So that's all coming up on Loaded this Sunday, 8 p.m. on the Defiant Wrestling YouTube channel. Make sure you join us there so you can see all of the action absolutely for free, just 6 days away from Built to Destroy. And of course, as I said earlier, Built to Destroy coming up on June 29th. We're going to be in Newcastle upon Tyne. You can join us in person in Newcastle. If you want tickets, it's wearedefiant.com/tickets, or if you're going to watch online on Access Defiant, access.wearedefiant.com, and you can see all of the action wherever you are on planet Earth. Right, that's just about it for this week. What have you got coming up this week?
Oh, I've got a very, very busy week, as always, hanging out with all my celebrity friends.
Who are your celebrity friends?
Oh, you know them, famous singers, actresses.
Name one.
Hugh Grant is one
Grant.
One of my best friends in the whole wide world.
Is he? Right, and what are you and Hugh doing this week?
Going ice skating, I think.
You're going ice skating with Hugh Grant.
I'm going ice skating with Hugh Grant, yes. Don't worry, his wife knows. Don't make this creepy.
Right, so is she going as well?
No, she's not a celebrity, so she's not invited.
Oh, I see. Just you and Hugh Grant going ice skating together.
Yeah, we might go for some food. The possibilities are endless. We could go and see a film. We could, do whatever we want.
That's the thing. When it's entirely happening in your head, the possibilities are endless because you can make up anything you want. It's a magical place to be, I'm sure. If people want to see no doubt there will be photographs of you and Hugh Grant on your ice skating night out together. How can people find you on Instagram or Twitter?
Well, there won't be photographs, sadly, simply because Hugh's phone is broken. He dropped it the last time he went ice skating with Taylor Swift.
Has it been hacked?
Well, that's a possibility when you're a huge celebrity name. You have to be careful of these things. For me, it's just, I'm not really one for taking pictures. So there won't really be any photos of our ice skating trip between me and Hugh Grant. But anyway, if you want to follow me on Twitter and or Instagram, you can do so at Top Class Kennedy. And if you go to the photos section of that, the media page, if you like, you can see several different fantastic photos of my gorgeous face.
Goodness. Are you preparing a 2020 calendar this year?
Well, I was, oiled up and doing some posing over the weekend. But, that had nothing to do with a calendar. But you've just given me an idea that, I could do a photo shoot. I think I would sell so many calendars. Hugh Grant would buy one.
I'm sure he would, yeah. Well, wouldn't you give him one for free? I thought you were best mates.
Anyway. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I don't know why I'm indulging this nonsense. You can follow me on Twitter at Dave Bradshaw. I won't go ice skating with Hugh Grant, but then nor will James R. Kennedy. So at least we'll be equal on that level. You can follow us on follow Defiant Wrestling on Twitter or on Instagram at Defiant Rest. That's at Defiant WRES. Do keep your questions coming in. Next week we're going to be running through the entire card for Built to Destroy. So if you've got any questions or thoughts on any of the matches announced for June 29th, we'd love to hear what you think ahead of next week's show. Thank you for listening. As always, we'll catch you on Sunday for that big episode of Loaded, and we will be back next week for the final Reloaded podcast before Built to Destroy. For James R. Kennedy, this is Dave Bradshaw. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.